This is Bengal in 1970s. These are its villagers, and this is a lotus pond. This is California in 1970s. These are its suburbs, and this is a glowing spaceship, being filmed by Steven Spielberg for Close Encounters of Third Kind, a film that redefined how world imagined aliens, changing cinema forever. But rewind 15 years back, when Hollywood was busy making rubber suit monsters and plastic spaceships, to Calcutta of 1967, where one man amongst India's greatest filmmakers, Satyajit Ray, was already writing a story about a stranded alien in a lotus pond who befriends a lonely village boy and challenges faith, class, and culture in ways Hollywood wouldn't catch up to for decades. The script was called The Alien. It was funny, poetic, deeply human, and Columbia Pictures was all set to make it. But when Satyajit Ray sent his script to the Hollywood studios, it mysteriously vanished into the system, only for its ideas to reappear years later in Spielberg's blockbusters.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind, extraterrestrial E.T.
This wasn't just a case of great minds think alike.
It's okay that your first attempts at telling a story are derivative.
This was the system that quietly pocketed India's greatest sci-fi idea before India ever got to see it.
Obviously influenced by something that you saw last week and you want to kind of do a verse.
Ray wasn't the first one to be chewed by this system. Back in 1972, Alejandro Jodorowsky spent 3 years in pre-production on his ambitious Dune adaptation, a first of its kind, and produced a 1,000-page storyboard, complete with every line of dialogue.
Yo quería hacer una película que diera a la gente que tomaba LSD en esa época las alucinaciones que la droga daba, sin alucinación. La droga, el cine, iba a cambiar la mentalidad del público.
But the project collapsed in a development hell, never making it to the screen. Its massive manuscript, however, circulated throughout Hollywood, seeding ideas that were later echoed in films like Ridley Scott's Alien to George Lucas' Star Wars. There is a famous documentary on it, Jodorowsky's Dune. Although Ray first wanted to complete his 2 regional films, Asani Sanket and Gopi Gayan Baga Bain, by the end of 1967. Why? Because the way he makes films will have changed after he has made this film. This was going to be the film that could have catapulted Ray to the arena that was occupied by Stanley Kubrick's, Hitchcock's, Polanski's of the time, his first big-budget studio hit. It all began 3 years back, in 1964, when he wrote a letter to Arthur C. Clarke, one of the best sci-fi writers of his time, who lived in Sri Lanka at that time, asking for his good wishes for his science fiction film club, which was one of the first in India as well as abroad, a first of its kind. Clarke replied, expressing admiration for Ray's films, and they became good friends, which led to their meeting in London in 1966, on the way back from a studio where they were together gonna watch Stanley Kubrick shoot 2001 A Space Odyssey. Ray's experience on that set changed him forever. In his article, Kubrick, True Thought and Sci-Fi for Ashrajo magazine, he goes into praising the amount of research that has gone into making it. Clarke's research into making it scientifically accurate. Since the story involved a trip to the moon, a rocket constitutes one of its most important elements. He met the designer of the rocket, who turned out to be one of the top men in the field of actual rocket designing. I asked him why he was working for films. Smiling, he said he earned more working for films than designing real rockets. The systematic thoroughness of the whole undertaking has to be seen to be believed. The scale he saw solidified the claim of its makers that this was going to be the biggest film ever made, and biggest naturally also means the costliest.
As I left the studio that evening, I really had the feeling that science fiction was coming into its own at last.
Rejuvenated, Ray outlined the idea he hoped to film. Clarke liked it, and when he went home to Colombo, he spoke about it with his close friend Mike Wilson. Now Mike was a highly professional skin diver, infamous for discovering 3 tons of mint Muslim silver coins from 17th century, 5 years back of the Great Bass's Reef. He then used it to bankroll a film set on the island, starring a Sri Lankan Secret Service agent with a familiar sounding name, James Banda, obviously lifted from James Bond.
When a man like that writes and tells you that he is ready to give his right arm to set up a co-production deal for you, you are inclined to take his word on trust.
Wrote Ray in a long account of the project's abortive history entitled Ordeals of the Alien. Not surprisingly, Wilson was the chief villain of Ray's piece, and there is a strong reason for it. Till 1966, Ray had no more than the bare bones of a story and some striking ideas. Still, he wrote the first draft of this screenplay in Calcutta in a record 10 days. Mike Wilson was present there. He made some small changes to the dialogue of Devlin, who was an American character, specifically the Bob Dylan song, Girl from the North Country. That was the extent of his contribution to the writing, although we will later see how Wilson will later claim co-authorship of it. And while Hollywood was busy complicating things, here's something that makes life simpler. Today's sponsor, Odoo. Odoo is your all-in-one business management software that basically takes the chaos of running a business and brings order. Think invoicing, accounting, project management, and even building your own website, all handled in one simple platform. And the part that I really like is the e-sign tool, because instead of printing, scanning, and mailing documents like it's still 1967, you just upload your file, drag and drop the fields you need, assign who is signing what, in what order, and you're done. No chasing after missing signatures. Once the document is signed, all the members included will get the signed copy in their email, and all the contracts stay in one dashboard. The first app is completely free. It comes with lifetime support, so check out Odoo by clicking the link in the description. It supports the channel and it will save you from paperwork nightmares. Thanks again to Odoo. Now back to the story. A few years earlier, Ray had written and illustrated a story for Sandesh, a children's magazine. It was his first sci-fi story, entitled Banku Babur's Bandhu, in which also a benign alien creature descends on a forest near an insignificant village in Bengal and makes contact with one of its humblest residents, Banku Babu. Apart from this story, Ray's Ovvio then included two ideas. First is from The Philosopher's Stone, Paras Patthar from 1958. The Patthar or stone itself falls from the sky in a shower of rain, plays havoc with the society and then vanishes. The second is the singing Nepalese beggar child in Kanchenjunga from 1962, who trails along behind the visitors from Calcutta. The alien and the child in Kanchenjunga could be very close, said Ray. Just like E.T. or Close Encounter, the alien is a small humanoid creature whose spaceship splashes down in an insignificant Bengal village far from Calcutta. There it is promptly taken to be a submerged temple which has risen up because a golden spire can be seen sticking out of the lotus-covered surface of the pond. Most of the locals begin to worship it. Those who do not include Haba, a poor village boy who survives off stolen fruit and beggary like Durga in Patra Panchali.
He's a man from outer space, and we're taking him to a spaceship.
And who forms a rapport with the alien creature after it has entered his dream at night and played with him. Mohan, a skeptical journalist from Calcutta, and Joe Devlin, a can-do American engineer from Montana, who distrusts anything he has not personally experienced. Devlin is in this backdrop area to drill tube wells on behalf of a rich industrialist named Bajoria.
War is too important to be left to politicians.
Like many of his Marwadi community, Bajoria wishes to improve his public image by good works. On seeing the golden spire in the pond, Bajoria instantly perceives its possibilities as the holiest place in India. The alien has other ideas. Consumed with playful curiosity about the world in which it has just landed, it gets up to all sorts of mischief, ripening a villager's cornfield overnight, causing an old man's corpse lying on its funeral pyre to open its eyes in front of his grandson. Just like E.T. resurrected itself. When he finally leaves, he takes Haba, the beggar boy, with him, someone who wasn't loved enough by his own community, quite similar to a major plot point in Close Encounters, where a father leaves his own family for something which he deeply feels inside his heart.
This means something. This is important.
Even the alien in E.T. turns out to be a botanist, just like Satyajit imagined.
কিন্তু ছেলেটার স্পেসশিপের ভেতরটা তার মধ্যে কোনো যন্ত্রপাতি বা ওসব বোতাম টোতাম নেই, সমস্তটাই ভেইনস এন্ড আর্টারিজ এর মতো চেহারা। সেটাও যেন একটা লিভিং বিং, একটা লিভিং বিং।
The social, religion and metaphysical are the same things that were challenged by Spielberg in both of his alien ventures from 70s and 80s.
You see, so first one has to consider what attracts one to a particular story.
He shifts Ray's religion versus rationality debate into a science versus faith debate.
There are certain elements which obviously draw one to the work in the first place. The director tries to preserve those elements, modify the rest of it, or embellish it with inventions of his own.
But Spielberg's true genius lied in imbuing his own experiences into these stories, as his own family's turmoil and fracture was documented in these films.
But then, after a point, while working on the script, you just forget the original story or don't look at it again. You have already absorbed it into your system, and what emerges is a combination of you and the original. And that is always what is needed.
Now that the script was ready, their conversation now turned to casting, and Ray suggested that Peter Sellers would fill the role of Bajoria quite well. He had seen and admired Sellers in Doctor Strangelove and knew that he had already played an Indian in The Millionaires. In March, actor Steve McQueen wrote to Ray, expressing his interest in a part. In April, Kubrick wrote to Ray, wishing him luck. In May, Guardian published Ray's interview, Alien in a Lotus Pond, and by June, he arrived in Hollywood. The place was beyond anything he could imagine, but he was on for the ride. And just like Close Encounters of Third Kind will in future, the alien began life as a Columbia project. He met Sellers at Ravi Shankar's home, where he was preparing for his new comedy, The Party, surprisingly playing an Indian student in it. The next day, he took Ray to his film shoot. He and Satyajit will never meet again. What he observed at the shooting of The Party made Ray doubt Sellers' judgment. When he finally saw the film in Sydney next year, just before Sellers withdrew from the alien, these suspicions were fully confirmed when he saw how tasteless his performance was. He also noted, not without amusement, a sly reference in the film was made to him.
Anyway, I have to get back to feed Oppo.
Oppo?
Yes, my monkey.
Oh.
Although Ray had been warned against teaming up with Wilson, he accepted that the link would help him in procuring foreign finances on terms acceptable to him.
It's only that I had a person who was working as a middleman who behaved peculiarly, and the idea had to be dropped.
Nevertheless, he was taken aback to discover mimeographed copies of his screenplay in his cottage, bearing the legend copyright Mike Wilson and Satyajit Ray, and in that order too, just like what happened with Jodorowsky.
This shit.
He knew Wilson was after his script, who then whisked him off to a series of parties. There were stars of the 40s, Olivia de Havilland, Rita Hayworth, William Wyler, figures he hardly believed existed in flesh. Satyajit left Los Angeles, firmly convinced that the alien was doomed. Back to Calcutta again, a letter arrived from Sellers. After reassuring him about his role's length, Sellers replied in July that he wants his part to be rewritten and that he doesn't see how he could contemplate playing it as it is. Ray replied, "Dear Peter, if you had wanted a bigger part, why you should have told me right at the start. By disclosing it at this juncture, you have surely punctured the alien balloon." For the next 10 years, Ray was variously encouraged to revive the project, and he continued to treat it as something possible in future.
এই যে করুন না আপনি দেখি আমি ওই আমার একটা ভয় যে একটু কতগুলো পরিবর্তন করতে হবে না কতগুলো আইডিয়াও মেরে নিয়েছে এই আমেরিকান ছবিটিতে কিছু আইডিয়া মেরে নিয়েছে
Then, on May 26, 1982, Steven Spielberg released E.T. In the year that followed, while talking about Blade Runner, which Ray found fantastic, Sumit Mitra pressed him about the alien. He replied,
Many ideas in the alien are in E.T. And there were mimeographed copies of my screenplay in Hollywood, hundreds of them at Columbia.
But the story didn't end there. It piqued the mind of an Indian journalism student, Asim Chhabra, at the Columbia University. But what really caught him off guard was when one of his friends at Columbia University Film School surprised him with a copy of the alien script.
Lots of people have read the screenplay,
which he apparently borrowed while interning at the Merchant Ivory production office, but then conveniently forget to return it. Now this gave him a real perspective on how common it was in those times for the script to get circulated around Hollywood.
Some Indian boy had read the script and seen E.T. and he gave out to the press that Mr. Steven Spielberg has stolen ideas from Satyajit Ray.
Ray agreed to talk to him on the phone. He told Asim that he had not seen E.T. but had talked to an attorney in Calcutta and discussed the possibility of suing Spielberg on plagiarism charges. But Ray was also concerned that Spielberg had made the necessary changes, that there is no case. There is no legal action possible in those circumstances. Mostly Ray sounded dejected. He says,
নাম দিয়ে ছবি হয়েছে এখন এমন অবস্থায় এসেছে যে আমার এলিয়েন আর করা সম্ভব না করলে বলবে যে আমি ওর থেকে নিয়েছি কিন্তু ব্যাপারটা আসলে উল্টো
and he knew Spielberg's view on it.
And Spielberg, of course, denied it.
According to a letter Clark wrote to the London Times, was that Spielberg was too young to have been influenced by the alien screenplay, which hardly resolved the doubts, especially since Spielberg was already an adult and getting started in movies in the late 1960s. E.T. and Gandhi were both nominated for the Best Picture. Some reporters wondered if Asim wrote the story because he was from India and wanted Gandhi to win. And the LA Times did 3 follow-up stories based on his article. Just before the voting was about to start for the Best Picture, Gandhi swept the Oscars, especially the Best Picture, winning 8 trophies. E.T. won 4 awards, mostly in the technical categories.
A lot of people took images and ideas with them and incorporated them to other projects. So it always leads back to
The Alien. Naturally, he regretted that his film never got made. If even a man as intelligent as Clark could only conclude his letter by linking Ray and Spielberg as 2 of the greatest geniuses the movies have ever produced, one can just imagine how little do Western critics distinguish between Ray's subtle Bengali whimsical, which was sensitive, poetic, culturally rooted storytelling, with Spielberg's Hollywood spectacle. If someone as brilliant as him can blur that distinction, Hollywood producers would have bulldozed its delicate Indian charm and turned it into something loud, commercial, and culturally tone deaf. especially since his film was about India. Spielberg never openly responded to any article, but in a way he did make peace with Ray. He was, along with Martin Scorsese, Ismail Merchant and James Ivory, were the key filmmakers who backed Satyajit Ray's honorary Oscar in 1992, in a way to amend what has happened. Perhaps it was really for the best that Ray's project vanished, like the alien spaceship.
I like simple themes, simple emotional situations, and I think simple things are more universal than complex ones.
Before the Bajorias of Wardour Street and Beverly Hills could pump out the water and get a real grip on it. Hey everyone, if this story intrigued you, I have only scratched the surface. Check out the book Travels with the Alien. I highly recommend it.